Evelyn Harper had worked for one company for most of her adult life. She gave the firm her time and her mind and her strength. She started when the business was smaller and more local. Over the years, she helped it grow into a huge global company. She became the chief financial officer. She stayed calm in crises. She kept the numbers honest. She protected jobs. She led teams. She mentored young people and watched them rise. When the board finally set her retirement date, the company decided to honor her with a large party. The event took place at a country club in Greenwich. The ballroom was full. Many people came. There were colleagues from every era. There were board members. There were interns she had trained. There was her assistant who had worked with her for decades. There was music and an open bar and warm speeches. The party was planned by Margaret Chen. Margaret was the chief executive officer. She was also Evelyn's closest friend at work. Margaret told Evelyn that she deserved a grand farewell. Evelyn accepted even though she felt tired in private. She wore a navy suit from Armani. She bought it long ago for an early board presentation. She had it altered over time, but it still fit well. It reminded her of the years she had survived. Evelyn's husband Richard attended the party. That alone felt strange. He did not like her work events. He often avoided them. When he did appear, he acted annoyed. He complained about food and noise. He sat away from others. He made her feel like she was doing something wrong by being successful. Richard sat at the head table with their children. Their son Brandon was a grown man. Their daughter Melissa was also grown. They dressed in expensive clothes that Evelyn had paid for. Both of them claimed to work in consulting. In truth, they often lived on money Evelyn sent. They had big tastes and weak results. They asked for help often. They acted like it was normal. Evelyn told herself they were still finding their path. She told herself it was love. Richard had not worked for many years. When Evelyn met him, he had charm and ambition. At least that was what she believed. Later his ambition faded. He called himself a consultant. That title became an excuse for long mornings and golf days and lunches at the club. He stopped caring about Evelyn's achievements. He stopped praising her. He stopped asking questions. He acted like her career was something he had to tolerate. During the party, Margaret gave a moving speech. She described Evelyn's first day. She described the way Evelyn learned fast and worked hard. She described a major acquisition that helped the company survive a financial crisis. She described the barriers Evelyn faced as a woman in senior finance roles. She said Evelyn opened doors for others. Evelyn listened and felt tears come. She stood at the podium and looked out at the faces of people who had become her true community. She felt that these coworkers knew her better than her own family did. Then Richard stood up. He walked to the podium holding a thick envelope. His smile looked fake. It was too wide. It did not match his eyes. Brandon and Melissa exchanged a look that Evelyn did not understand. Richard began a speech about their marriage. He spoke as if he had been a heroic partner. He claimed he held the home together while Evelyn climbed the corporate ladder. Some guests gave polite laughter. Evelyn knew the truth. Richard did little at home. They had help for most house tasks. Richard mostly managed comfort. He rested. He watched television. He gave orders. He acted like sacrifice meant choosing a golf tee time. Richard then said that now Evelyn was retiring, he had realized something. He paused and looked directly at her. He said he would not support a jobless old woman. The room went still. The music stopped in an awkward way. The words hung in the air like a slap. Richard opened the envelope and pulled out papers. He announced that they were divorce documents. He said he had already signed them. He said he wanted Evelyn to sign as well. He spoke as if he was asking her to sign a receipt. Evelyn felt frozen. She sat at the head table holding a champagne glass. She could not move. She could not understand how the moment had turned into a public attack. She waited for someone to defend her. Then she heard applause. The clapping came from her own children. Brandon clapped with a smug face. Melissa joined with a proud look. They were not shocked. They were not sad. They looked satisfied. Evelyn felt a pain sharper than the insult itself. She realized they had wanted this. Brandon called out for her to sign. He said the marriage had been dead for years. Melissa told her to treat it as a fresh start. Their voices sounded like strangers. Evelyn stared at them and tried to remember the children she had cared for. She remembered feeding them and carrying them and driving them to school and practice and events. She remembered saving for their needs while working long weeks. She remembered missing vacations to handle business emergencies. She told herself it was for the family. She looked at them now and felt she had been feeding something that did not love her back. Richard walked toward her with the papers held out. He told her to sign and not make the scene worse. Evelyn felt disbelief. She thought nothing could be more humiliating than what he had already done. She took the papers. They were thick. They had tabs marking signature lines. The language was legal and dense. Her eyes could not focus. Her mind was full of noise. She did not read. She could not read. She pulled a pen from her pocket. It was a special pen her father had given her when she finished business school. She signed every marked line. She wrote initials. She wrote dates. She did it again and again. She did it with precision the way she signed contracts at work. She did it while the room watched in silence. When she finished, she placed the papers on the table. Then she removed her wedding ring. It had a large diamond. Richard once gave it to her with hope in his eyes. That was long ago. She placed the ring on top of the papers like a final stamp. She told him he was free. Her voice did not shake. Then she walked out. Her heels clicked on the marble floor. She heard murmurs behind her. She heard someone call her name. She believed it was Margaret. She heard a laugh that might have been Melissa. She did not stop. She went to her car. It was a Lexus she bought for herself on her birthday. It was the first car she chose without Richard's opinion. She sat behind the wheel and stared forward. She felt the weight of decades fall. She thought about the marriage. She thought about her effort. She thought about the constant work travel. She thought about the nights she returned home exhausted and still tried to be present. She thought about how she always paid. She thought about how she always fixed problems. She thought about how quickly her family had turned on her in public. She drove to a hotel in Southport. It was close enough to feel safe and far enough to feel separate. She checked in using her corporate card, which was still active for a short time. She asked for the best suite. The clerk asked if she was celebrating. Evelyn said she was celebrating an ending. The suite was quiet and beautiful. It had a view of the harbor. It had a large bed. It had a large bathroom. She ordered room service. She ate fish and vegetables while watching boats move in the dark. Her phone kept buzzing. She ignored it at first. Later she looked. There were many missed calls from Richard. There were many messages from Brandon and Melissa. There were voicemails she did not play. There was one message from Margaret asking her to call because there was something important. Evelyn turned off her phone and slept. In the morning she woke early out of habit. She ordered coffee. She turned on the television for noise. A business segment played on local news. The announcer reported that Hartwell Industries had announced a historic retirement package for Evelyn Harper. The amount was enormous. It was described as one of the largest ever awarded to a female executive. Evelyn stared at the screen. She had known the package was generous. She had not absorbed the scale. Now she heard the figure spoken aloud and felt stunned. Her phone started buzzing again. Overnight it had powered on while charging. More missed calls appeared. Richard called again and again. Evelyn watched his name flash. The photo on her screen showed a smiling version of him from a trip years earlier. That smile now felt like a lie. After many calls she answered. Richard sounded desperate. He said they needed to talk. Evelyn said she did not think they did. She reminded him that she signed the papers. Richard said there had been a misunderstanding. Evelyn asked what kind. Richard admitted he did not know the severance would be so large. He said they needed to renegotiate. He said the papers were not fair. Evelyn laughed. She could not help it. She laughed because the cruelty of the situation had turned into a clear pattern. Richard tried to soften his words. He claimed his insult had been taken out of context. Evelyn repeated his exact line back to him. He went quiet. Then he said they could fix things. He begged her not to file. He asked her to give back the copies she signed. He offered counseling and trips and a new beginning. Then he said what mattered most. He said the money was too much for one person to manage. He said they should manage it together. Evelyn ended the call and called Margaret. Margaret explained that the retirement package had been approved earlier but was confidential until the press release. Evelyn had signed an agreement to keep it private. Richard did not know the amount. Margaret said she had tried to tell Evelyn the week before, but Evelyn had been focused on the transition plan. Margaret also explained something else. Richard's lawyer had contacted the company lawyers weeks earlier. They asked about the divorce timeline. They asked about whether Evelyn would receive retirement compensation and when it would be finalized. Evelyn felt cold. She understood. Richard did not need the exact number. He only needed timing. He wanted her to sign an agreement before the announcement. He wanted to lock in terms before she knew what she was worth. Evelyn told Margaret she needed the best divorce lawyer in the state. Margaret gave her a name. Rebecca Stone. Rebecca Stone's office was high above Hartford in a glass tower. The view was wide. Rebecca herself was sharp and confident. She had silver hair and a strong handshake. Her eyes caught details like a scanner. Rebecca told Evelyn that someone had recorded the retirement party and posted it online. Many people had recorded it. The video had gained tens of thousands of views quickly. Rebecca offered to show it. Evelyn did not want to watch. She watched anyway. She saw herself in the navy suit. She saw Richard hand her papers. She saw her children clapping. She saw her own steady hands signing. She saw her face trying to hold dignity together. Rebecca said the public sympathy was with Evelyn. The internet called Richard a monster. Evelyn said he was not a monster. She said he was worse. She said he was a coward who planned cruelty with care. Rebecca then laid out copies of the divorce papers. She had obtained them from Richard's lawyer. She called the agreement predatory. She said it gave Richard nearly everything. It handed over the house and properties and accounts and retirement funds and vehicles. It included clauses that waived any right to future earnings and severance. It also included language that tried to protect Richard from claims of fraud. Evelyn was horrified. She had signed away her life. Rebecca explained that the agreement would likely fail in court. Evelyn signed without counsel. She signed in public. She signed while distressed and pressured. That alone supported a claim of duress. Rebecca then showed a financial disclosure form filed with the divorce papers weeks earlier. It listed a small portion of the true assets. Rebecca said her research showed the household wealth was far larger. She said Richard had hidden millions in assets. She said the severance was not disclosed either. That omission alone could invalidate the agreement because it was a major asset approved by the board before the filing. Evelyn felt grief turn into something harder. Shock became focus. She wanted action. Rebecca laid out a plan. First, they would ask the court to void the agreement. They would cite fraud and duress and incomplete disclosure. Second, they would file a counterclaim seeking an equitable division of assets based on contributions. Since Evelyn was the main earner for decades, Rebecca would argue Evelyn deserved a larger share. Then Rebecca introduced another discovery. A credit account existed that used Evelyn's personal identification as a guarantor. It had been active for years. The charges were large and repeated. The billing address was an apartment in Stamford. The primary name was Diane Crawford. Evelyn did not recognize the name. Rebecca showed a photo from building security footage. It showed a well-dressed woman entering the lobby, carrying luxury shopping bags. Evelyn studied the face and posture. Something seemed familiar. Rebecca explained that Diane Crawford was a real estate agent now. Before that, she worked at Hartwell Industries as an assistant. She later moved into marketing. Evelyn then remembered her. Diane used to be Diane Marshall. Evelyn had once promoted her. Later, Evelyn fired her for falsifying expense reports. Now Diane seemed linked to spending tied to Evelyn's identity. The evidence suggested Richard had funded this for years. Evelyn realized what that meant. She said it aloud. Her husband had a long affair. He had paid for it with Evelyn's money. Rebecca said that was likely. Rebecca also suggested the children may have known. That could explain their reaction at the party. Evelyn stared at the city below. She thought about normal families. She felt anger, but it was clean and steady. She wanted the full truth. She asked Rebecca to document every hidden asset and every lie and every act that could be proved in court. Evelyn moved into a small furnished apartment in Greenwich. It was not luxurious, but it was hers. It did not hold memories of betrayal. Messages kept coming. Richard begged her to talk. Brandon accused her of tearing the family apart. Melissa threatened her with the grandchildren. Evelyn did not answer. Evelyn wrote to Margaret. She thanked her for the referral. She also asked for any information about Richard's knowledge of the severance timing. Evelyn wanted to know how he planned the ambush. Then an unknown number called. Evelyn answered. A woman's voice said she was Diane Crawford. Diane said she needed to talk. Diane asked to meet at a coffee shop in Greenwich. Diane urged Evelyn to bring her lawyer. Diane said what she had to reveal would change everything. The next day, Evelyn went with Rebecca. Diane looked different in person. She looked tired. She seemed anxious. She did not behave like the confident figure from the photo. She admitted Evelyn likely hated her. Evelyn said she did not know her well enough to hate her. Evelyn said she only knew Diane had been with her husband while Evelyn paid. Diane said she did not know about the credit account connection until recently. She claimed Richard told her the Stamford place was his for business. He described their relationship as something separate from his marriage. Diane admitted she knew he would not leave Evelyn. She said she did not care at first. Then she saw the retirement party video and saw how Richard treated Evelyn. That changed something in her. Rebecca asked for evidence. Diane opened a folder of documents. There were messages and account records. Diane said she met Richard at a professional event after Evelyn fired her. Richard painted himself as an unhappy husband. He described Evelyn as cold and obsessed with work. Diane now believed he targeted her because she had reason to resent Evelyn. The texts showed planning. They showed Richard speaking about Evelyn as if she was a brand and a resource. They showed him saying the children were on board. They showed him promising them money. They showed him saying they would help when the time came. Diane then showed bank records from accounts Evelyn had never seen. Transfers went in monthly. The funds appeared to come from a household source. Rebecca said it looked like shell accounts used to siphon money away quietly for years. Diane also revealed there were separate accounts set up for Brandon and Melissa. Richard had been paying them monthly, sums to keep them loyal and silent. Diane said Brandon once walked in on the affair at the Stamford place. Richard paid him off. Diane said Melissa found messages years earlier and demanded money to stay quiet. Evelyn felt sick but also strangely calm. A pattern became complete. The applause at the party was not spontaneous. It was planned. Her children were not confused. They were involved. Diane then shared the most damaging evidence. A group chat among Richard and Brandon and Melissa. It discussed the plan for the party. It said the ambush had to be public for maximum humiliation. It said Evelyn would sign just to escape. It mocked her habits. It said she would not read the documents. It guessed the severance would not matter much. It said the real goal was to lock in the house and investments. It joked that Evelyn would not know what hit her. Evelyn read the messages again and again. The pain did not fade, but it changed. It became solid. Diane said there were more cruel messages that called Evelyn a cow and talked about milking her. Diane also had messages between Brandon and Melissa that mocked Evelyn and called her desperate for a family. They planned their behavior at the party. They planned laughter and applause. Rebecca asked Diane if she would testify. Diane agreed. She said she was done being used. She admitted she had been part of the betrayal, but she wanted to expose Richard. She said Richard called her after the news broke. He wanted her help to convince Evelyn to tear up the divorce papers. He promised a fresh start after he got access to Evelyn's money. When Diane refused, he insulted her and called her a distraction. Diane realized she had wasted years. Before leaving, Diane gave one more piece of information. She said Richard had an inside contact at Hartwell. Someone who fed him details about Evelyn's schedule and retirement timing. Diane believed the person worked in human resources. Rebecca promised to find the identity. Later, Rebecca confirmed the source. It was a senior staff member in human resources named Sandra Wells. She knew Richard from college. She had fed him information for years. She had been terminated after an internal investigation led by Margaret. Rebecca built a case like a war plan. She used forensic accounting. She gathered bank trails. She organized timelines. She prepared claims to void the agreement. She prepared motions to secure the home and accounts. She prepared for potential criminal referrals due to fraud and identity misuse and concealed assets. Evelyn received more messages. Brandon wanted to talk and claimed it was personal. Evelyn refused. She said all contact should go through counsel. She could not accept private apologies after public betrayal. One night, Evelyn looked through old photo albums. She saw the children when they were small. She saw happy faces. She asked herself when it changed. She wondered if it changed slowly through years of absence. She wondered if Richard poisoned them. She wondered if money made them careless. She did not find a clear answer. Then Sandra Wells called. Sandra apologized. She said Richard had lied to her. He claimed Evelyn was dishonest. Sandra believed him. Sandra said Richard blamed her when the plan failed. Sandra then revealed another account that Richard planned to use. She described an offshore account. She said she had emails as proof. She had copied them from her work system. Evelyn told Sandra to send everything to Rebecca. Soon the case reached court for a preliminary hearing. The courthouse was harsh and gray. Richard sat with a high-priced lawyer from New York and Junior Associates. Richard looked smaller than Evelyn remembered. He looked like a man losing air. Evelyn sat beside Rebecca. Evidence boxes were at their feet. The gallery was packed with observers and reporters. Many people knew the viral story. The judge was Catherine Morrison. She had a tough reputation. She asked both sides to state their motions. Richard's lawyer wanted to freeze Evelyn's severance pending the divorce. Rebecca wanted to void the agreement and grant Evelyn exclusive possession of the home and protect assets. Richard's lawyer argued that the severance was earned during the marriage and should be divided. He argued Evelyn signed voluntarily. Rebecca presented the video of the retirement party. She explained the setting and the surprise and the pressure. She argued it was an ambush designed to force a signature. She presented the false disclosure forms. She presented proof of hidden assets. She then presented the messages showing planning and mockery and coordination. Richard's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Rebecca presented evidence of shell accounts and payments and the affair. She presented evidence of the offshore account. The judge listened. Then she issued preliminary rulings. She declared the agreement void due to the circumstances and incomplete disclosure. She granted Evelyn exclusive possession of the home. She ordered Richard to leave within a short period. She froze accounts in Richard's name, including the offshore account. She referred the case to prosecutors for review of criminal fraud. Richard looked stunned. He stared at the table. When he looked at Evelyn, his face held pure hatred. Evelyn held his gaze without fear. She did not smile with warmth. She smiled with resolve. Richard turned away first. Rebecca suggested seeking a protective order due to Richard's emotional state and the intensity of his loss. Evelyn agreed. The legal battle continued. Richard tried to negotiate to avoid trial. Evelyn refused to settle quietly. She believed a public trial would expose the full truth. She believed Richard counted on her shame to keep her silent. She was done protecting his image. Eventually the case reached a full trial. It lasted weeks. Rebecca presented the fraud and the concealment and the planning. Richard's legal team struggled. When the criminal investigation grew serious, his expensive lawyer stepped away. Richard tried to blame Evelyn on the stand. He cried and said he felt neglected. The court did not reward his story. The final judgment granted Evelyn the large majority of marital assets. Richard kept only personal items and a small sum compared to what he had tried to steal. The criminal case came later. The fraud and tax issues and offshore concealment brought real consequences. Richard was sentenced to prison time. Diane testified in exchange for legal protection. Sandra also testified. Both of them seemed relieved to end the deception. Evelyn did not attend Richard's sentencing. She had seen enough courtrooms. Her children faced civil action. They repaid much of what they received. They signed agreements admitting their role. At Rebecca's advice, Evelyn did not push for criminal prosecution against them. They were adults who made cruel choices. They were also still her children in the deepest part of her heart. Evelyn did not forgive them. She simply chose a line that kept her future from being chained to endless punishment. Evelyn did not speak to Brandon or Melissa afterward. Brandon tried to contact her many times. He sent letters and messages and even appeared at her home once. Evelyn called security. Melissa took another path. She sold a story to media outlets. She painted herself as a victim. She claimed Evelyn was a monster. Evelyn did not read it beyond the headline. The hardest part was the grandchildren. Evelyn loved them. She had helped pay for their schooling and their needs. Now Melissa used them as leverage. She also filled their ears with her own version of events. Evelyn grieved for them in quiet moments. She hoped that as they grew older they might seek the truth themselves. Evelyn built a new life. She moved to a townhouse in New Haven near the harbor. She liked watching the boats. She liked seeing people start their days. The water made her feel calm. It reminded her that movement continues and life renews. Evelyn also created a foundation. She wanted to help women learn financial skills. She wanted to help women leaving controlling and abusive relationships. She gave grants to programs that taught budgeting and credit safety and legal basics. She did this because she had learned that power at work does not always protect a person at home. She had been a senior executive and still became a target of financial abuse. Margaret stayed close as a friend. Margaret called Evelyn when the foundation made a major grant. A business program reported it. Evelyn did not want fame. She wanted impact. Margaret told her she was doing both. One day Evelyn received a message from an unknown number. It was from her granddaughter Sophie. Sophie said she missed her grandmother. She said her mother did not know she was texting. She asked if she could call sometime. Evelyn stared at the message for a long time. She felt fear that Melissa would punish the child for reaching out. She also felt hope. She wrote back with love and care. She told Sophie she could call. She told her she would be there when she was older. Evelyn knew it might bring more trouble. She still chose love. She chose to be present in the only safe way she could. Later, a young researcher from Yale visited Evelyn. The woman was writing about financial abuse in marriage. She wanted Evelyn's perspective. They spoke for hours. Evelyn described the signs she missed. She described the ways Richard used social roles and secrecy and emotional pressure. She described how easily people can hide money and how hard it can be for a spouse to discover the truth without help. The researcher said Evelyn's story mattered because it showed this can happen to anyone. Evelyn agreed. She said she had power at work but not at home. That was what Richard counted on. After the meeting, Evelyn returned to the window and watched the harbor. Her phone buzzed again with another message from Sophie. Sophie wrote that she would wait and that she loved her grandmother too. Evelyn smiled. It was her first real smile in a long time. That evening, Evelyn attended a foundation event. It was in a ballroom like the one where she had been humiliated. This time the room felt different. The people were there for hope and support. Margaret was there. Rebecca was there. Many new friends were there. Evelyn gave a speech about rebuilding. She spoke about being underestimated. She spoke about refusing to stay down. She admitted that her husband treated her as a resource. She admitted that her children learned to see her in the same way. She said when she stopped being useful, they tried to discard her. She said she was still standing. She said it was never too late to reclaim your life. The applause was long. People stood. Some cried. Evelyn left the podium and felt the solid ground of a new identity. Not a wife. Not a wallet. Not a target. A whole person who had chosen her own future. Driving home, she passed the exit toward Greenwich. She did not take it. She kept driving toward New Haven. She drove toward the life she was building. She planned to read grant applications. She planned to meet advisors. She planned to walk by the water and breathe. She planned to live. She knew some bridges could not be rebuilt. She knew some betrayals were too deep for forgiveness. She also knew she could still build something better. She could build a life that depended on herself. She could build a legacy that helped others. She could wait for a granddaughter to find her again. And until that day, she would keep working and living. Because survivors do that. They keep moving forward.